Hello and welcome to this presentation of The Essence of Human Consciousness, summarized, composed, and narrated by Douglas K. Poore. This theorem is inspired by mystical teachings through the Epoch of Man and has been revealed and expressed by Eckhart Tolle in his audio book, The Essence of Human Existence, excerpts from a presentation he made at a retreat he hosted in India. The natural essence of human consciousness is knowing and understanding the formed identity which only exists in the now. The conditioned mind is what we identify as ourselves. This is the formed identity. You have formed an identity based on what you know about yourself. Your identity is a self-constructed concept of who you are. They are ideas formed by the individual and becomes his or hers formed identity. This is where we derive a sense of self. So, how do you know yourself beyond the formed identity? It is the ultimate spiritual question. Who am I? Am I more than this? The present moment is the mind-made egoic self's main enemy. It fights, opposes, and ignores the moment of now. The irrational egoic mind doesn't want it. It never wants the now. The now gets in the way of the future that is going to fulfill me. The egoic self denies the now as it looks to the future for more satisfaction, for more fulfillment. However, it is always unachievable because it is not living in the now. It says, I have to get away from what is happening now because I have to be someone and somewhere else. Many spiritual seekers have searched for years for fulfillment in the future. They rarely have ever looked at the presence of now. It's the only thing that never leaves you. It's the only thing that is always real. Now is the only place where anything can happen, ever be, thought, said, experienced. It has to be now. Life is always this moment. But again, the mind-made egoic self is always striving for the next fix and completion. It denies that it is here now. If one could just fully acknowledge that I am here in the presence of now. The mind denies that it is already here now, in this present moment. We can find all enjoyment in exactly what is happening now. If one could only acknowledge fully and deeply this here, this now. If one can go deeply into the now, one would find beyond the mental story that he or she is already totally complete. You can't find yourself when striving for more. The illogical egoic mind makes the now an enemy and tries to run away from it into the future. Most of the people in the world culture are trying to get to the future for fulfillment, and our whole life is spent in a frenzy of huffing and puffing and striving to arrive somewhere ahead in the future. We need to see the fallacy of this and then begin to pay attention to the now. First, one needs to see the pulling away from the now, and one begins to notice this separation from the present. Then comes the epiphany, that all there ever is now. All that you ever have truly is the present moment of now. So many people don't want the now because the formed identity it takes on is something that one doesn't want now. It cannot even observe oneself in the form this moment takes. It's not fulfilling enough. It feels like limitation where we want expansion. Why not try to live with inner alignment with the form that this now takes? Our answer is to embrace the now internally, no matter what form it comes in. We say yes to now, which after all is life. Living is inseparable from now. Life is always now, and never not now. We say yes to life and say yes to the form this moment takes. It is always the reality of this moment. The shift in consciousness occurs when you say yes to what is, to truly accept this moment. We can step out of thousands of years of conditioning and be here now. Remember that the formed identity is limitation. It is the cause of pain and suffering as it resists the present moment. This cannot be understood by everybody. To find yourself, you do not need future. I welcome this present moment, in the moment, because it is all there is. We are limited by identifying with our formed identity, which is illusion, which culturally has been pressed upon us throughout humankind's existence. There is a spaciousness in accepting the present form of now. When you say yes to the now, there is surrender, acceptance, and peace. We are now in the surrendered state of consciousness. We surrender to the spirit of universal love, soul. Everything is interconnected in the cosmos through the soul. The whole universe is this moment. Again, resisting it causes human pain and suffering. In the surrendered state, we honor the now, and there is spaciousness, even amongst the current form limitation. We honor the now in any form that enters the now. We honor and enjoy all people, places, and things in the present moment. Surrender to the form of now. It then takes you into the depths of the present moment, which is the essence of your being. Now is the essence of who and what you are, and you are the now. The background and explanation of the form identity. The form identity never feels complete or at ease or at peace with itself. There is an enormous need in human beings to add more to me, to make me feel complete. This can never really be attained. It is a strong momentum that generates the wanting and needing. We look outside of ourselves to complete our sense of self. The external things such as cars, money, relationships are all the illusions that will complete us. The mind-made self seeks its completion through getting something it wants, and when one receives it, one eventually feels that I still haven't arrived. The irrational, egoic mind always wants something more. There is this great need to add to me, but the completeness never lasts. It is the fleeting and the elusive. The feeling of not having made it yet. That feeling of not being truly yourself. And people believe that it is their personal problem. We believe that others exist that have made it, and the culture says that you have made it when you have more. There is the need for looking good outwardly, for approval, and the need for status in society. It's the need for others to tell me how great I am, so I will feel adequate. One looks up to the rich and famous as symbols of making it, and under their great facade, they also have this great deficiency. It didn't complete them. The whole world telling them that they are great, but deep down inside, mostly subconsciously, they feel that this is an immense illusion. It is the striving, egoic mind telling them that they are important. They are calling out to the world that they matter. One sense of self cries out that I am important, I am enough. It is at this time that some of these people awaken and then see through the delusion and penetrate to deeper levels of their being in the presence of now. For most people, it is not really their unique personal problem that they haven't made it. This is a societal, cultural problem. One's created, formed identity is built into the very collective structure deeply in the culture of society. This is the mind-made sense of self that always needs more. That deficiency and sense of lack is inseparable from those mind structures of the individual formed identity. Therefore, nothing anyone can add can fulfill them. It is only fleeting, and this is the truth. Then the hope is in the future, where acquiring more will be found, and that is why so few humans are rooted in the presence of now. Some spiritual seekers are observing that more is never enough to fulfill oneself. They have to be careful that this finding more in their spiritual seeking, that they are also trying to add more to the self to be fulfilled, which is the falsity. It becomes their present formed identity, which is an illusion, because they are still reaching for more for me in their seeking. This is where one can acquire a spiritual ego. They think that their spirituality is greater, is more than others. They haven't really arrived yet, but they are certainly more than all those others unconscious of spirituality. This is very subtle, and you have to be very vigilant to see it. To reiterate, that deep-seated mental conditioning, the formed identity, the need for more, is present deeply throughout our collective culture. In the wounded adult child, the parallel is that one never feels good enough. I have to do more. I have to be more. And the more one strives, the more one is frustrated. And then, reaching out, hoping the future will bring one to a place of being enough. This is where there is that great psychological need for future. This is not a place of peace, because I seek to complete myself in my projected future. This is that great need for more of me, and it is where one makes the separation from the presence of now. There is in humankind a collective insanity, which is opposition. I need others to rise above in order to acquire more for me. It's me against them to get my sense of self through gaining more than others. This brings about competition, conflict, wars, annihilation, and separation from the other. This separation from the other person is the true error, truly the greatest sin of mankind. Ironically, it says, I am looking for serenity, peace, happiness, and joy. But this is also the formed identity of seeking more for me. the vicious cycle. This is where we say we are for peace, when we are really seeking opposition of people to rise above and therefore have a greater sense of me. Also, the irrational egoic self is looking for problems for a sense of its formed identity by solving them and feeling a sense of more. Furthermore, opposition and arguing give one the opportunity to win and feel more than the other. Let's prove that they are wrong. We will attack them, and then we are right. And the illogical egoic sense is heightened. And in this twisted reality, the more enemies we have to fight with, the more we have the sense of self. And society acts this out to strengthen the illusion of me. This has always created and formed the collective madness of humanity. So what is humankind to do? If the human mind is trapped into this collective conditioning of the mind, will the world's people ever find healthy sanity? Are we ever going to find out who we are beyond the illusion of the formed identity? This formed identity is totally dysfunctional, painful, and not sustainable. The formed identity is a part of who one is, the illusional aspect. The remedy for this is to not get locked into the role of who one is and not being able to surrender to this instant's reality in the present moment, and therefore looks to the future for being saved. Everyone has a sense of identity. The dilemma becomes that one so identifies with that sense of formed identity that one becomes rigid and doesn't have the flexibility to surrender that identity. My depression occurred when I lost all sense of identity that I was clinging to for my survival, when I was no longer the station manager or the owner of the video business or the person single-handedly sailing. I had nothing more to cling to that would make me adequate. Then the anger occurred at myself for believing that I was a failure, and I had no future hope of becoming anything more again. And the hopelessness really drove the depression deeper, and I hated being in the now, where it was so painful, and therefore I fought being in the presence of now. The goal of the formed identity is to try to fill that void, that insufficiency, that lack. The attempt is made to make one complete by living for future fulfillment. The true grace of living in the presence of this moment is that it never changes, that it never leaves you, because it is the essence of now. The field where all phenomenon happen, it is the unconditioned consciousness. You know the now beyond the formed identity it takes, but you don't know it in a subject-object relationship. You know this field of now when you surrender to the form. Then you know that which is beyond form. The essence is to surrender to the form, the limitation. Then the emergence of what is beyond formed identity and limitation as yourself is realized. This goes against how everybody lives in this world. They do not surrender to the limitation of form. They subconsciously want to somehow run away from it. Surrender to the form of now. That will take you into the depths of the present. It becomes the self that you know as the essence of your being. The surrender moves one to be totally at one with now. It never leaves you, because you can't leave yourself. It is the essence of you. You become the unconditioned dimension of who you are. And when you know that, you can allow the conditioned form to be what it is in the present moment, and its beautiful, harmonious symmetry. It is current form as you appear, because you don't need a formed identity anymore to derive a sense of self from. The form of surrender to now is magnificent. You honor whatever is now, for many for the first time. When you know yourself to be the surrendered form, you do honor and accept the awareness of all the forms completely. To surrender to the seeming limitation of the formed identity is the ultimate truth taught by the mystics through the human epoch. It is the surrendered state of consciousness. It is the total surrender to all limitation and the seemingly unacceptable. Not my will, but thy will be done. Thy will is the will of the One. Then your will is the totality and is connected to the whole of the universe as one. The very limitation turns into the symbol of the divine. So it's not by resisting or running away from the divine, it is by the deep act of surrender that the divine presence is realized. The natural essence of human consciousness is knowing and understanding the formed identity which only exists in the presence of each moment. Surrender can only be in the now. The moment of surrender is always the present, because you surrender to the total reality of the presence of now. Thank you for your being here and now for this presentation. The Essence of Human Consciousness, summarized, composed, and narrated by Douglas K. Poore. This theorem has been inspired by mystical teaching through the Epoch of Man and has been revealed and expressed by Eckhart Tolle in his audio book, The Essence of Human Existence. Excerpts from this oral presentation at a retreat he hosted in India. This presentation is made possible by www.practical-spirituality.org and was produced by dd-tv.com. I'm Douglas K. Poore. Bless all in the healing light of the divine indwelling Spirit of universal love, soul, on all people, places, things, all animals, plants, and atoms of the universe. Now, go in peace and serenity and have a very productive day in the presence of now, with peace and love to all.